Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating guidance document that honestly fundamentally changes how we view justice. Now, when you think of human rights, you probably picture, massive protests, landmark courtroom battles, or passionate political speeches. But what if I told you that one of the most powerful, literal life-or-death human rights safeguards on the planet is actually paperwork? It sounds completely mundane, I know, but the administrative procedures we're going to look at today are the hidden engine keeping justice running.
Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. We'll be looking at the Nelson Mandela rules, the 5 principles of dignity, the power of paperwork, preventing human rights violations, the global tech disparity, and finally, why this matters.
All right, Section 1, the Nelson Mandela rules.
To really grasp the gravity of our source material today, we first need to set the historical context. Our source is a guidance document published by the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights along with Penal Reform International. It outlines the UN's revised standards for the treatment of prisoners, and the name they chose here is deeply intentional. These standards were named the Nelson Mandela Rules to honor the legacy of the late president of South Africa. This is a man who spent 27 grueling years in prison, so his legacy perfectly frames the universal importance of what's inside this document.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer span of time we're dealing with. On one hand, we have the original standard minimum rules, which were adopted way back in 1955. For decades, those were the absolute blueprint for global prison systems. But, 60 years later, correctional science had evolved massively, and those 1955 rules were kind of falling out of step with modern human rights. So fast forward to the 2015 update. The UN General Assembly unanimously adopted these revised Nelson Mandela rules. They didn't rewrite the whole thing from scratch, though. Instead, they did this really smart, targeted revision of 8 critical areas, bringing the standards forcefully into the 21st century.
Moving on to Section 2, 5 principles of dignity.
Let's look at the philosophical foundation of these rules. Before we even touch the administrative mechanics, we have to look at the heart of the document, which distills some really complex legal concepts into 5 basic human values. These are the bedrock for everything else we'll cover. Rule 1 establishes inherent dignity, meaning it strictly prohibits torture and cruel treatment under any circumstances. Rule 2 guarantees non-discrimination, ensuring impartial treatment while still actually recognizing specific vulnerabilities. Rule 3 is absolutely crucial. It states that the deprivation of liberty is the punishment. The prison system itself shouldn't add aggravated suffering on top of that. Rule 4 shifts the focus to rehabilitation, meaning the ultimate goal is protecting society by reducing recidivism and helping people reintegrate. And finally, Rule 5 introduces normalization. That's the idea that prison life should mirror life on the outside as much as safely possible, and that includes full accommodations for disabilities.
Section 3, the power of paperwork. So here's the major pivot of our explainer. In a totally closed environment, way out of the public eye, how do you practically guarantee those 5 principles? The answer provided in our sources is, highly unexpected. And honestly, there's a distinct irony to it, this realization that a well-maintained spreadsheet might actually be a better defender of human rights than a grand political speech.
And this brilliantly illustrates the point. The unsung hero of human rights, the actual mechanism that turns high-level philosophy into on-the-ground reality, is administrative paperwork. Meticulous file management and solid record-keeping act as the literal barrier between a prisoner and abuse.
Let's break down exactly how this works according to Rules 7 and 8. These are the mandatory steps for receiving a prisoner to ensure no one just, disappears or gets lost in the system. Step 1. Right off the bat, there must be a valid commitment order signed by a legal authority. Without it, the detention is flat out unlawful. Step 2. Precise identity details must be logged. That includes self-perceived gender, alongside family and emergency contacts. Step 3 is a massive safeguard. Officials absolutely must document any visible injuries or complaints of prior ill treatment right at admission. And Step 4 dictates that a continuous, confidential trail of judicial dates, disciplinary actions, and medical needs is maintained. It basically builds a complete paper shield around the individual.
Section 4. Preventing human rights violations.
Now, we're shifting to the high-stakes reality of this data collection. This isn't just about red tape or keeping administrators busy. This is quite literally a matter of life or death. Our source text highlights a staggering quote from the UN Special Rapporteur that perfectly captures the stakes here. There is no surer way to facilitate torture, disappearances, or extrajudicial killings than failing to keep adequate records of detainees. Think about that. When records are poor or missing, the whole system just goes completely dark. An accurate file system literally acts as a force field against abuse. First, a proper register prevents incommunicado detention, which is when someone is held without access to the outside world, and it stops enforced disappearances. Second, it guarantees due process. I mean, if your file gets lost, you might literally miss your court date or lose your right to challenge your detention, known as habeas corpus. It also protects against double jeopardy, being punished twice for the same offense, and ensures people aren't held past their release dates. Finally, by logging injuries and health data, it ensures strict accountability if someone is hurt or, tragically, dies in custody.
Section 5. The Global Tech Disparity.
So, we know the rules and we know exactly why they're essential. But let's look at the practical, on-the-ground reality of trying to implement these rules globally. A joint survey by the International Corrections and Prisons Association and Europris looked at 36 prison services across 33 countries to basically gauge their technology. And while the ideal state is this centralized, secure electronic system that talks seamlessly to courts and police, the current reality is a messy, highly vulnerable mix of electronic and paper-based records. The major risks highlighted in the source are aging computer systems, duplicate records, where someone might accidentally be entered twice, and the constant looming threat of data loss. Closing this tech gap is a huge priority for international human rights advocates.
Section 6. Why this matters.
To wrap up, let's bring this all back to the macro-level impact. How do these individual files and daily administrative tasks shape the society we live in? Well, the crucial point is this. Aggregate data from thousands of individual files is what builds a safe, accountable system. When administrations have good data, they can spot system-wide trends, like dangerous overcrowding or spikes in suicide risks, and actually intervene. It allows for evidence-based decisions, putting budget and staff exactly where they're needed most for rehabilitation. Ultimately, strong record-keeping promotes transparency. It tells the public that the justice system is fair, accountable, and fundamentally committed to safeguarding the inherent dignity of its most vulnerable people.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. We so often look to judges and juries for justice, right? But as we've seen, the foundation of human rights is actually built on meticulous records. If human rights rely on perfect documentation, can true justice ever exist without a flawless paper trail? It really highlights just how fragile our rights can be and how absolutely vital the mechanics of administration are to protecting them. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems that shape our world.